So hello and welcome to day 14 of Freedom from Anxiety in Uncertain Times. That 14 days has flown by. You're very welcome today, and if you're here, be sure to say hello so that I know who I have here with me live. Before I start today's session, I just wanted to say thank you for all the beautiful comments that came in after yesterday's live with Laura. And yes, Laura is a beautiful soul. I can't disagree with that. And I've passed on all your lovely messages to her, and I'm sure she's thrilled with all of them. So thank you. Okay, so as we come to the end of week 2, and that went fairly fast. And before we move on, I'm going to take today to revisit the best way to show up and listen to these lives. And the reason I want to revisit it is I really want everybody to have the best possible experience that they can with this. So I've also been getting feedback that there's a lot of noise coming from my computer, so I'm trialing a little mic today, so you can let me know if that's any better, and if it's not, we'll keep exploring and see if we can find something else. Okay, so to begin today, I suppose I'm going to start by saying that I've been working in HR since the year dot. I'm not going to tell you what year because it makes me sound too old. But it's something I have a feel for. And what that means is it's something that I can do at a pretty high standard without having to overthink it or think too much about it. So it's not that when I face HR situations on a day-to-day basis, that I'm cognitively engaging my machinery up here to think about what I'm going to do every day. It's just that I've been at this so long and I have such a feel for it that in real time, in any situation, it seems obvious to me what's going on and what the root of an issue might be. And it also seems obvious to me what the right route to take is, or the path forward. So that's me in my HR space. Now, when I go to do an exercise class, it's a different story altogether. It's rare that I actually make the journey from my head down into my heart or into my body when I'm doing physical exercise. I tend to be self-conscious and a bit awkward, and the chances of me doing a really good job are fairly slim because of all that self-consciousness and all the thinking that I have about it. I know what to do, I know the moves, I know the steps, I know what I should be actually doing, but getting my body to do it in an easy and graceful way can sometimes seem like an impossible task. So I suppose I'm just trying to point to the difference between two primary learning approaches that we use. And the first one that we're all really familiar with is learning by rote and cognitive learning. And we've all been subjected to that if we've been through the school system. And the other way is to get a feel for things. So, like I say, I have a real good feel for HR. I've been working in that space and living in that space and leaning into that space for a very long time. So it is in the muscle, so to speak. But just to give you a little example of this for yourself, imagine if you were asked to go into a building that you hadn't been in before and to navigate your way through it blindfolded. So you have no idea where you're going. And you're given two choices. And the first choice that you're given is we can give you a map and you can memorize the map as best you can and go that route. Or the second option is that you can be guided by a trusted friend playing the game of warmer and cooler. Now, we've all played warmer, cooler, or warmer, colder as children, so I hope you know what I'm speaking about. Now, memorizing the map could be helpful, but it's kind of down to you're dependent on the accuracy of the map in the first place, and that it hasn't changed, and that there's nothing different going on inside, and you're also depending on your own memory. So, will you get through it? Maybe, maybe not. But when you're being trusted or guided by a trusted friend in the game of warm or colder, then you're only dependent on the degree to which you trust your friend and the degree to which you're going to listen to them and take on board the directions that they give you. Now, you might bump into a few things along the way, that's normal, but if you're being guided by the game of warm or cooler to navigate your way through the building, then really all you need to do is listen. Bumps here and there are fine, and eventually if you keep playing the game, you're going to get through the building. It's kind of a given. So We spend most of our time when we're learning something new in this cognitive rote type learning. We read books, we listen to podcasts, we watch movies, we go to training programs, we show up here. And a lot of the time we're not looking for our own best path through life. Oftentimes we're showing up in front of other people and we're trying to memorize what worked for them. And, as I keep saying, we all have our own wisdom. When we get beneath the layers of thinking in our personal mind, then it's a level playing field because we all tap into this wisdom, and it's the same in all of us. So, there's nobody any better than anybody else in this space. So again, just to try and bring this to life, like when I'm training, and you may be familiar with this process, we start with unconscious incompetence. So we don't know what we don't know. And then we move to conscious incompetence, where it's brought into our attention and our awareness what we don't know, so we're aware then of what we don't know. And then we move into conscious competence. So we go through a learning process to take us from being incompetent to competent, and it's all being done in here through memorization and rote. And then we eventually reach a place where we're unconsciously competent. So we go from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. And the easiest way that I can think of to describe this is when we're learning to drive a car. So when we are learning to drive a car, we have to get the book of the rules of the road, and yes, we do have to learn those off by heart, but that doesn't make us a good driver. You've got to get in the car. You've got to get a feel for driving. You've got to keep practicing until you get a really good feel for it, and eventually you become a competent driver. And you travel then from unconscious incompetence to a point of unconscious competence where you can drive the car home from work and you're scratching your head when you get there wondering, how did I even come here? You don't remember the route. So we're all designed to be on these unconscious competence, and that is to learn by feel and not to learn by rote. Now, I've talked about babies before, and they're a great example of this. I mean, if you think about it, in the first 2 years of life, babies learn at a fast and furious pace, and they grow at a fast and furious pace. And they don't have stacks of books to guide them or test them, and there's no curriculum, and there's no exams along the way, and they just seem to get on with it because they're leaning into it. They're not doing the cognitive learning, they're getting a feel for life, and they're being guided by their inner wisdom, because they don't have the rational mind like we do just yet. And as Mark Twain used to say, or has said, if we all learned to walk and talk the same way that we were taught to read and write, then we'd all be going around with limps and stutters. And I think that's just a great saying and a great example. So I suppose that leads us to a question, and the question is, well, how can this game of warmer, cooler actually help me in my life? How can it help me have an easier life? How can it help me be more fulfilled? Can it? How do we know what to listen to, and how do we know what to listen for? So I've talked about feelings before, and this is the key, is to let your feelings guide you, but not in the way that you might think. So let me explain. There's a tendency sometimes for us to ignore what comes up for us in the moment, or our in the moment feelings, especially if we have something in our head about there's a right way to do something. Now, the right way to do something can have been passed on to us by people that we care about and people that we believe in, and when people share with their own certainty and express their own truths, it can look like the right way to us, and we can adopt that. But sometimes when we go to do something in what's the right way, we have an inner feeling that tells us something different, and we can tend to ignore that. So that's what I'm speaking about. It can also show up as worshipping our emotions, because it's like our emotions are in charge of us, that, when we feel something in our body, that we feel compelled by it, we feel seduced by it, into some sort of action or reaction. And the other thing that can happen when we're ruled by our emotions, or we seem to worship them, is that we can get paralyzed by our emotions. So I was talking about exercise a minute ago. For a long time it looked to me like if I didn't feel like exercising, then that wasn't the thing for me to be doing. But just because I didn't feel like it in the moment didn't mean that it wouldn't be a good thing for me to do. But I wasn't listening for whether it was right in that moment or not. I was just listening to the feeling and being led by my mood, I guess, in that moment. Now, the kinds of feelings that I'm talking about that can reliably guide you, these exist independent of your mood and independent of your personal mind, because I'm talking about the deeper feelings that reside within that deeper place beside us, behind us, within us, wherever, above, below, beyond, behind, it doesn't really matter, but it's something deeper. And I just want to put a little prop with me today. I have a little coin and I'm going to play a little game with you. So just to get a feel for this and to feel your way into it and to feel the difference, we're going to try a simple exercise, and it's called Follow the Flip. So I want you to think of a decision that you need to make, or it can be something as simple as what you're going to have for your lunch, or it can be as serious as who you're going to marry, or the career that you're going to follow, or change, or whatever. It doesn't matter. You decide, big or small, makes no difference. So here's my coin, and I've got heads and I've got tails. So I want you to decide, if you go one way it's heads, and if you go another way it's tails. So I'm going to flip the coin and I'm going to tell you what way it lands. But before I do, I want you to decide what does A represent and what does B represent, so that you know when I flip the coin what answer you got and what direction you're moving in. Okay, with me so far? So before I do that, you have to promise to abide by the decision of the universe as signaled by whether it's heads or tails. Okay? Can you make that promise? Alright, so the time has come to flip the coin. Okay, so here's my coin. I'm going to flip her. Whoa! And it's landed on, we ready? Take a deep breath. It's landed on tails. Now, if you've been playing along, and if you've been going along with me, you'll have experienced a visceral response to the flip of the coin. And it's going to look to you like it's the fact that the coin came up tails that's giving you that visceral feeling. Now, that could be happy, it could be disappointed, it could be sad, it could be anything. Relief maybe even. But whatever it is, it doesn't come from the flip of the coin. It comes from whatever thinking was passing through your mind at the same time that the coin was being flipped. The way you felt before I flipped the coin and the way you flipped after are fantastic access points to your inner wisdom. Because if you were thinking, am I going to have a chicken sandwich or am I going to have a ham sandwich for my lunch? And heads was chicken and tails was ham, and it came up tails and you're feeling disappointed, then you really wanted the chicken. So what I'm pointing to is that you already know. We get confused by overthinking things in our mind, but the simple flip of the coin has told me if I feel relieved, then that was the sandwich I wanted, and if I feel disappointed, then I really wanted the other one. Very simple. So that's the coin. So I'm just going to move on now and talk about the different ways that we can get in our own way as we show up here and try to tune in and learn this new way of navigating our life, as we try to understand and learn how the human system is working perfectly all the time and how to tap into our wisdom. So I was listening to a mentor of my own this week, and she was talking about 3 different ways that will guarantee that you'll get nothing out of this conversation. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. So thanks, Nicola Bird. So as I'm speaking, are you sitting there listening to what's being said? Or are you sitting there thinking about what's being said? Because if you're sitting there thinking about what's being said, then you're not listening. Not listening in a way that's going to benefit you in this conversation and in this space. Real listening is about showing up with nothing on your mind, with that open mind, that open heart, and the willingness to see something new. And when we show up in that way, there's space for something new to come in and for something new to land. But if we're all caught up in here trying to figure out, and I'm thinking about what's been saying and I'm matching it to other things that I know, and I'm thinking about, do I agree, do I not agree, what does this mean, what does it not mean, that's not the point, and we miss the point completely. So just something to look out for. Another way that we can get in our own way, and I know I did this for a long time, was listening to remember. So, taking loads of notes and trying to remember the top 3 things that I can take away from this so that I can remember them later and they'll serve me well. That's another form of not listening. Because if you're retaining information and scribbling it down, then you're not open and you're not listening. Because quite simply, we can't listen and think at the same time. We think we can, but we actually can't. So it's not a great way to listen, because it's not important to remember what you hear every day here. The metaphors don't matter. The words don't matter. That's not what's important. What is important, and what I'm more interested in, is the feeling that you have when you sit here and listen. Or listen to another teacher. It doesn't have to be me. So I'd invite you to be more interested in listening for a lovely feeling, and listening to be impacted, listening to be moved even. And, a great example of this is, when we go to a music concert, for instance, we go see our favourite band play. When we come out after the concert, we're not talking about, oh God, I wonder how many sheets of music were in that song, and, going through all the words of the songs in detail. We don't do that. We come out and we say, oh my God, that was a great night, and we go in, we allow ourselves to be immersed in the experience, we allow ourselves to be moved by it. And when we come out, then we say, oh my God, I was laughing, and I was crying, or I forgot all my troubles and I danced the night away, whatever it might be. So that's a great experience of when we're not listening and tuned in to the actual detail and content of what's going on. Then it's the same for art. We can be moved by a beautiful picture, we can be moved by sunsets, by nature, all sorts of things. But the point is, when we're not caught up in our thinking and we're listening with that open space, then we're moved. So that's what I really would like you to be listening for, is how you're feeling and how you're moved. So, not sure if there's anybody with us today. I don't see any comments. Alrighty. So I suppose the other thing that we can do to get in our own way is, and I guess I did this too, if I'm honest, is arguing for our limitations. And you're listening and you're kind of going, and it's just another variety of listening to your own thinking rather than listening and allowing what's being said to actually land. So if you're sitting there thinking, yeah, this is grand, but you don't understand my situation, and mine is real, and yeah, but my situation is serious, and yeah, but my anxiety is inside of my body and I can't make it go away, or I'm listening but I'm not getting anything out of it. I suppose what I'd say about that is, until I saw this for myself, and I just didn't see it, but this was something that I did. And I can, we can continue to listen in that way and to argue for our limitations and to continue with the justifying and explaining. But the alternative is we can become less interested in all of that. I know at some point all the old habitual stories that were going around in my head just suddenly became boring. And while they once were very compelling and very seductive, they lost their seductiveness. And as I stopped arguing and started listening more openly without engaging with my thinking while I was listening, then we stopped listening to the old stories that tell us that we're broken, that we're not good enough, that we need something or somebody or some career or some set of circumstances, whatever it might be, something external to us in order to make us feel better. So if we're interested, if we become less interested in that and more interested in looking in a new direction, then we can listen for something that we don't know. We can listen to experience something that we maybe never imagined was possible for us. And that's the beauty of this conversation, is that when we become less interested in our old stories, then we can be surprised and we can be open up to something new and beautiful. So the way we get in our own way is simply old thinking, habitual thinking, programming, old habits. Me too, you know, I'm human as well, I still go there. But it's really helpful to know that if I'm not being impacted when I'm listening, then I'm thinking in one of the ways that I just described. You know, trying to remember, trying to figure it out in my head, trying to justify what's going on for me and engaging with all my yeah but this and yeah but that. So the opportunity for the next 2 weeks, folks, is to leave our stories at the door. You know, when we sit down to listen, you know, to this understanding, to just leave our thinking and leave our stories and our programming, our conditioning at the door. We can go back and pick them up when the live is over and engage with them again if we want to. And the more open you are, the more surprised that you will be. So the invitation, I guess, is to lean into this and not to try and learn it by rote. Don't try to remember it, and don't try and, you know, you might be thinking, how can I explain this to somebody else later? You don't have to. It doesn't matter. So if you're listening in this open way, then something will start to shift and life suddenly just becomes easier and more graceful, as Laura was saying yesterday. So I'm going to leave it there today, folks, and I hope you all have a lovely Saturday. And I am back with a guest tomorrow. You've met all the 5 ladies that I wanted to introduce to you at this point, so they'll all be coming back again over the next couple of weeks. And tomorrow we have our first guest. So I look forward to seeing you then. And in the meantime, have a lovely Saturday. Take care, everybody. Love to all. Bye bye.